My name is Christy. I am 30 years old, and what I am about to tell you is the story of the moment my family betrayed me in a way I never imagined. It started on a quiet morning that should have been filled with excitement. I had been planning this day for more than 2 years. Every extra hour I worked, every dinner I skipped, every sleepless night staring at a spreadsheet was all for one reason: to give my parents the trip of a lifetime. A luxurious 1 week vacation in Europe, flights, booked hotels, reserved tours, arranged every last detail carefully handled. I thought this was going to be the moment where I finally proved to them how much I loved and valued them. But instead, I pulled into their driveway at 6 o'clock in the morning and saw my mother step outside with her suitcase. I smiled, tired but proud. Then I saw her, my sister Lauren. She followed close behind, dragging her own suitcase across the porch. At that moment, my smile froze on my face. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice caught between shock and anger. My mother didn't flinch. She was far too cheerful for what she was saying. "Christy, sweetheart, we decided Lauren should come instead of you. She has been so stressed lately, and she really needs this trip." Her words felt like a blade sliding under my skin. I stood there gripping the handle of the trunk I had come to load with their bags. My chest tightened as her casual dismissal rang in my ears. I had spent years preparing this gift, and in one sentence, she erased me from it. Lauren smirked. That little tilt of her lips told me everything I needed to know. She was not guilty. She was not hesitant. She was triumphant. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, her voice dripping with mock gratitude. My father stepped outside, then silent, carrying his bag. He avoided my eyes. He knew it was wrong, but he was too weak to stop it. He handed me the suitcase as if I was nothing more than the driver for their adventure. I could feel my pulse in my ears. My throat burned with words I wanted to spit out, but instead I forced a smile. "Fine," I whispered to myself. "If they want her to take my place, let them." That morning, standing on that porch, I realized something I had been avoiding for years. It did not matter how much effort I poured into my family. It did not matter how many sacrifices I made. In their eyes, Lauren would always come first. Always. So I clenched my jaw, opened the trunk of the car, and loaded their bags. I told myself I would not give them the satisfaction of watching me break. But inside, a storm was already building. A storm that would change everything. Okay, this is where it all began. The betrayal that forced me to stop being their fixer and start being my own person. The car engine hummed softly as I tried to control my breathing. My parents and Lauren sat behind me chatting like this was just another ordinary morning. But to me, nothing about this was ordinary. I had been erased from my own gift. "Christy," my mom said as she buckled her seatbelt, "you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Lauren needs this one now." Her tone was sweet, but it cut sharper than a knife. Always working too hard. That was her excuse. All the late nights, the hours of overtime, the years of saving every spare dollar, suddenly those things didn't matter. They had decided that my sacrifices were just replaceable. Lauren leaned forward, her perfume filling the car. "You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you. I could never have afforded this on my own." She smiled like she had just won the lottery. I kept my eyes on the road, forcing my lips into something that looked like a smile. Inside, my heart was pounding so loudly I thought they might hear it. Dad cleared his throat in the back seat. "Thank you for driving us, Christy. I know this feels unusual." Unusual. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. I looked at him through the rearview mirror, my voice low but steady. "That's an interesting way to put it, Dad." He shifted uncomfortably and looked away. The silence after that was unbearable. Every word they spoke to each other felt like another reminder that I wasn't really included anymore. I wasn't part of we. I was just the driver delivering them to their dream vacation. And yet I said nothing, because saying something would have meant breaking, and I refused to let them see me break. I thought about the hours I had spent planning this trip, how I stayed up late comparing hotel ratings, looking at photos of cobblestone streets in Paris, of gondolas in Venice. I had pictured us laughing together in small cafes, my mom sipping espresso, while Dad tried to pronounce Italian words. I had imagined bonding memories that would last forever, but the only memory I was making now was the image of Lauren sliding into the back seat of my car, stealing everything I had planned. I pressed my lips together and drove faster. By the time we pulled up to the airport, my patience was hanging by a single thread. I unloaded their bags one by one, placing them on the curb. Mom hugged me quickly. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. This means a lot to us. And to Lauren." Lauren beamed, rolling her suitcase toward the entrance. "You're the best, Christy." I stood there, my chest tight, as they disappeared into the terminal. My gift, my sacrifice, my years of saving, all handed to someone else. The drive home was a blur. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. Every word they had said replayed in my head. "She needs it more. You can always work harder. Thank you for understanding." Understanding, no. What I felt wasn't understanding. It was betrayal. I parked in my driveway and sat there for several minutes, staring at the empty passenger seat where my suitcase should have been. My chest rose and fell with each angry breath. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. In that silence, something inside me hardened. I realized I had a choice. I could either continue being the family's doormat forever, giving forever overlooked, or I could finally draw a line. And right there, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached, I decided. They wanted Lauren to have the trip fine. She could have it. But they wouldn't enjoy it. Not on my dime. I marched into the house, opened my laptop, and began canceling everything: hotels, tours, upgrades, all of it. My inbox filled with confirmation emails one after another. With each click, a small piece of my pain lifted, replaced by the sharp satisfaction of taking control. They thought I would always fix everything. They thought I would always smile and forgive. They thought wrong. And if you're listening to this, maybe you felt it too. That moment when the people you love push you aside, like you're nothing. If you've ever been there, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments if you've ever been replaced or overlooked by the people who should have valued you most. And if you believe these stories need to be told, hit subscribe so you won't miss the rest. Because this story, it was only just beginning. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with the laptop still glowing in front of me. My fingers hovered above the keys as I watched the confirmation emails pile up. One by one, my carefully crafted reservations disappeared. 5-star hotels, guided tours, dinner reservations in restaurants I had spent weeks researching. Gone. For a second, guilt tried to creep in. My mom's voice echoed in my head. "She needs this more than you. You're always working so hard." But the guilt quickly twisted into anger. Why was it always me who had to step aside? Why was it always me who had to be the reasonable one? I closed the laptop with a sharp snap and leaned back in my chair. My chest still hurt, but there was a strange calmness beneath the rage. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing their mess. I was creating boundaries. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. At first, I ignored it. Then I finally glanced at the screen. Dozens of missed calls, dozens of texts. I opened one. "Christy, what's going on?" "The hotel won't let us check in. The reservation is missing. Call me immediately." I scrolled to the next one. "This isn't funny. Fix this now." A laugh escaped me, bitter and short. Fix this. They really believed I would swoop in to save them again like I always had. Lauren called next. I let it go to voicemail, but her voice came through sharp and entitled. "Christy, this is so petty. We're stuck here because of you. Call the hotel and fix it now." I deleted the message without finishing it. For years, that voice had dictated my every move. For years, I had stepped aside, swallowed my pride, and done what they wanted. Not anymore. The phone buzzed again and again, vibrating across the table. Finally, I answered just to stop the noise. "Christy, what did you do?" my mom demanded before I could even say hello. "The hotel says the reservation was canceled. None of the tours are booked anymore." "Why would you do this?" I let her rant. I waited until her voice ran out of fuel. Then I said calm and steady, "Because you took Lauren on my trip. You're lucky I even drove you to the airport." There was silence on the line. Then her voice dropped to a hiss. "We thought you'd understand." Understand, my voice cracked as my anger spilled out. Understand that years of saving and planning meant nothing. Understand that you can erase me because Lauren needed a break. No, Mom, I don't understand, and I don't care to. I hung up. My hands shook as I set the phone down, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. That night the house was quiet. For once, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. I didn't have to figure out how to make them happy. I didn't have to be the fixer. And even though part of me still ached, another part of me felt lighter. I sipped tea at the kitchen table and thought about everything I had done for them over the years. Every holiday I bent my schedule to make things work. Every family gathering I was the one running errands. Every time Lauren failed, I was the one covering the gap, and they still chose her. The truth was undeniable now. They didn't value me. They valued what I could do for them. That realization was painful, but it was also freeing. I want to ask you something. If this had been you, if the people you loved most had thrown you aside like you were nothing, what would you have done? Would you have swallowed it down like always, or would you have fought back? Tell me your answer in the comments, because I'm curious how many of us have lived through this kind of betrayal. The story wasn't over. In fact, the chaos was only beginning. The silence after that call was deafening. For the first time in my life, I had hung up on my mother without scrambling back to apologize. My phone lay face down on the table, buzzing every few minutes with their desperate attempts to reach me. But I refused to answer. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I remember staring at the walls of my living room, realizing how much of my life had revolved around them. Every decision I had made, what hours I worked, how I spent my weekends, how I saved my money, was built around the idea of keeping my parents comfortable. And now, after 2 years of sacrifice, I had been replaced without a second thought. The following day was strangely quiet. I left my phone on silent and went about my normal chores. I cleaned the kitchen. I watered the plants on the porch. I even cooked myself a real breakfast, something I usually skipped in my rush to work overtime. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself, not for them. But curiosity got the better of me by evening. I picked up the phone and unlocked the screen. The flood of messages hit me all at once. From Mom Christy, you've gone too far. Your sister is in tears. Your father is furious. We can't get into any of the hotels you booked. Fix this immediately. From Lauren, you're acting like a child. I don't get why you're making such a big deal. Just call the hotel and straighten it out. From Dad, we need to talk. This isn't right. I set the phone back down, shaking my head. All 3 of them. Not one of those messages contained an apology. Not one of them acknowledged what they had done to me. They just wanted me to fix it like always. Later that night, the phone rang again. Against my better judgment, I answered. This isn't funny anymore, my mother barked. Her voice was sharp with anger. We're stranded. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? I took a slow sip of tea before replying. Embarrassing. You think this is embarrassing. Try saving for years, planning every detail, and then being told you're not even part of the trip you paid for. Stop being dramatic, she snapped. Lauren needed this more than you. My grip on the mug tightened. Then let her figure it out, I said firmly. You made your decision, Mom. You chose her, but don't expect me to fund her vacation. There was a pause on the other end, followed by her low hiss. We're family. We don't do this to each other. A bitter laugh escaped me. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing. From the background, Lauren's voice rang out. Mom, just hang up. She's being impossible. That was the final straw. Enjoy your trip, I said, my tone icy. Oh, wait. You can't because it isn't your trip. It was mine. And now it's nobody's. I hung up before my mother could respond. The quiet that followed felt like a shield around me. For years, I had drowned in their demands, always patching up every mistake, always stepping aside for Lauren. But in that silence, I realized something powerful. I was finally free from their control. I spent the rest of the evening sitting on the porch, the night air cool against my skin. The stars above were sharp and clear, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. They would call me selfish. They would call me petty. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about finally standing up for myself. And if you've ever had to draw a line with the people you love, if you've ever had to choose your own dignity over their approval, then you know exactly what I felt in that moment. The peace, the relief, the terrifying freedom of saying no more. This was just the beginning. The fight wasn't over. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my blinds, but instead of peace, I woke to the relentless buzzing of my phone. Dozens of missed calls, more messages than I could count. For a brief moment, I wondered if maybe I'd gone too far. But then, I remembered the porch, the suitcase, the way my mother's words had sliced through me. Lauren needs this more than you. That memory burned away any trace of doubt. I scrolled through the texts. From Mom, Christy, this has gone too far. Call me right now. You've humiliated us. We are your parents. How could you treat us this way? From Lauren, you're ruining everything. You're petty. This isn't about you. Just fix it. And from Dad, quieter but still piercing, I don't understand what's happened to you. Call us back so we can sort this out. I tossed the phone aside. My family wasn't reaching out because they regretted what they had done. They weren't apologizing. They were demanding. And for once, I wasn't giving in. Still as the hours passed, their voices echoed in my head. Every word felt like a hook, trying to drag me back into the role I'd always played, the fixer, the caretaker, the one who smoothed over every crack. But I was done with that. By evening, a neighbor stopped by, Grace. She carried 2 cups of coffee and her usual sly smile. I heard what happened, she said, setting 1 cup on my table. I groaned. Of course you did. Let me guess. My mom called you to rally support. Grace chuckled. She tried. But I told her you were probably busy and would call back when you were ready. I blinked surprised, then laughed. You're the best. Her expression turned serious. No, Christy. You're the best, because you finally stood up for yourself. I know how hard that is. Her words sank deep. They wrapped around me like armor. For years, I had been the silent shadow sacrificing my own peace to keep everyone else comfortable. But Grace was right. Standing up for myself was hard, terrifying even. Yet for the first time, I had done it. That night I journaled. My pen moved quickly across the page, pouring out years of resentment I had never spoken. Christmas dinners where Lauren's preferences dictated everything. Birthdays where my accomplishments were dismissed as not as exciting as Lauren's news. Vacations where I was the one budgeting, planning, and arranging while Lauren breezed through as the star. This trip was not just a single betrayal. It was the final crack in a wall that had been crumbling for years. And for the first time, I promised myself I would not rebuild that wall. If you're listening right now, maybe you've been where I was, the invisible one, the reliable one, the one who never got chosen. Maybe you've been asked to step aside for someone else too many times. If you've lived that, I want you to know you are not alone. Drop a comment and tell me if you've ever been treated like the afterthought. And if you want to hear how this story escalates, because trust me, it does, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because the storm with my family, it was only beginning. The days that followed felt surreal. For the first time in years, my house was quiet. No demands, no guilt-laced phone calls I was obligated to answer, no calendar full of responsibilities that were never mine to carry. I thought the silence would feel lonely. Instead, it felt like breathing fresh air after years of drowning. On the 3rd day, curiosity got the better of me. Against my instincts, I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with more than a dozen voicemails. My thumb hovered before I pressed play. The first few were my mother's, her voice sharp and frantic. Christy, you need to call me back right now. This has gone too far. I can't believe you're doing this. You've humiliated us. We are your parents. How could you treat us this way? The next were Lauren's, dripping with entitlement. This is so petty even for you. You've ruined everything. Just fix it already. Finally, my father's voice came through. Quieter. He sounded tired, worn down. Christy, I don't understand what's happened to you. Call us back so we can sort this out. I sat there listening, my jaw tightening with every word. Not one voicemail was an apology. Not one acknowledged the betrayal. It was all about their humiliation, their anger, their disappointment. That night I cooked dinner for myself, pasta with garlic and olive oil, something simple yet comforting. As I ate, I thought about how often I had starved myself of these little moments, always rushing to do more for them, always pushing aside my own needs. The next evening, another voicemail came in, longer this time. My mom's voice was no longer furious. It was low, almost exhausted. We're back at the airport now. The trip is ruined. Your sister is devastated. Your father and I are disappointed, doesn't even begin to cover it. Call us when you're ready to talk. I deleted it without replying. I wasn't ready to talk. and for the first time I realized I didn't have to be. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat outside on the porch. The air was cool, the sun dipping below the horizon. My chest felt lighter than it had in years. This wasn't just about a trip. This was about every moment I had been sidelined, every time I had been told to step aside so Lauren could shine. Every time my work was dismissed as just what Christy does. The trip was the breaking point, but the cracks had been spreading through my life for years. As I sat there, I thought about how I had been cast in the same role over and over again, the fixer. The one who canceled her plans so others could succeed. The one who sacrificed without being asked because everyone assumed she would. Not anymore. That night I pulled out a fresh notebook and began writing. Not a journal entry this time, but a list. Things I wanted. Things I had pushed aside for years. Small dreams like taking a photography class or traveling somewhere just for myself. Bigger dreams like starting a small business or finally creating a life where I wasn't chained to my family's approval. With each word I wrote, I felt myself reclaiming something I hadn't even realized I had lost. The silence from my family continued for a few days. Then, of course, the storm started again. Calls, messages, anger, accusations. But something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt the instinct to answer immediately. I no longer felt the pressure to soothe. I was learning what freedom tasted like. Have you ever had that moment when the noise stops, and for the first time you can hear your own voice again? It's terrifying at first, but also exhilarating, because in that silence you realize something powerful. You get to choose. You get to decide what comes next. And for me, what came next was a confrontation I had avoided for far too long. By Sunday afternoon, the quiet was broken once again. My phone buzzed across the counter, the screen flashing with my dad's name. For a moment, I considered ignoring it like I had the rest. But something inside me told me to answer this time. "Christy," he began, his voice heavy with weariness. "Your mom wanted me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me." I leaned back in my chair, arms folded. "Go on." He let out a long sigh. "This has all gotten out of hand. Your mom's upset, Lauren's furious. And well, it's just a mess. But you're better than this." The words lit a fire in me. Better than what? Better than finally standing up for myself. My laugh was bitter. "You're right, Dad. This isn't like me, because I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess this time." "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "You've always been the reasonable one. The one who keeps everything together. This isn't you." I closed my eyes for a second, then snapped them open. "You're right. It isn't me. Not anymore." For a moment I thought he might hear me, that maybe he would finally understand. But instead he said, "You're punishing the whole family over one decision. Is that really fair?" The word hit me like ice. Fair. How many times had I swallowed unfairness with a smile? How many times had I let Lauren be the chosen one while I faded into the background? "Fair," my voice rose. "Was it fair when you and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned? Was it fair when you replaced me with Lauren like I didn't matter?" "No, Dad. What I'm doing now is fair. It's finally fair to me." There was silence on the line, heavy, suffocating. Then his tired voice came again. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't need you to say anything," I replied, my voice steady. "I just need you to understand that I'm done being the afterthought. From now on, I come first." And with that, I ended the call. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. My chest heaved as if I had just run a marathon. The tears I had been holding back finally slipped free, hot against my cheeks. Anger, sadness, relief. It was all tangled together, but underneath it all was something new: power. Later that evening, I sat on my porch swing sipping coffee as the sun dipped low. My neighbors waved as they passed, and for once I didn't feel small or invisible. I felt like someone who had finally spoken her truth. When my parents and Lauren finally returned from their disaster of a trip, I was ready. Ready to face the storm, ready to hold my ground. I wasn't scared anymore. And I want to pause here because I need to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, would you have picked up that phone call? Would you have listened to a parent try to guilt you back into your old role? Or would you have cut the call and walked away for good? Tell me your answer in the comments. I want to know how many of you would have handled it differently. Because for me, that call wasn't the end. It was just the lead up to the most explosive confrontation of all. The morning my family's taxi pulled into their driveway, I was already there waiting. I sat on the porch swing, coffee cup in hand, watching the cab door open. Their faces said everything before a single word was spoken. My mom looked exhausted. My dad carried the heavy slump of defeat, and Lauren well. Lauren had her arms crossed, her expression sour with barely disguised rage. They dragged their suitcases up the walk, their steps heavy. Lauren was the first to speak, her voice sharp like broken glass. "Well, I hope you're happy, Christy. The whole trip was a disaster." I raised an eyebrow, sipping my coffee slowly. Happy about what? My mom threw her hands in the air. "We spent the entire week in dingy hotels eating terrible food, and don't even get me started on the tours. Oh wait, there weren't any. Do you know how humiliating it was to walk up to a desk and be told there was no reservation?" I let their complaints wash over me. "Sounds rough," I said, calm, almost too calm. "But you wanted to take Lauren. I'm sure you had some great bonding time." "That's not the point," Mom snapped, her voice rising. "You knew we couldn't afford all the things you'd planned. You set us up to fail." I stood, setting my mug on the small table beside the swing. "No, Mom. I didn't set you up. I planned a trip for the three of us. Something I worked for, something I sacrificed for. You're the ones who cut me out at the last second." Dad's voice came quiet but still accusatory. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Christy. That was extreme." I folded my arms. Extreme. "You think paying for a trip I wasn't even invited to makes sense? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have planned it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel your return flights." Lauren rolled her eyes, the entitlement practically dripping from her. "You're so dramatic. It's just money, Christy." My patience finally snapped. "And you're so entitled, Lauren. Do you have any idea how much work and sacrifice went into that trip? Or do you just assume things magically appear for you because someone else always picks up the slack?" For once they were silent. I took a deep breath and continued, my voice steady but firm. "I've spent years being the responsible one, the one who fixes everything, the one who makes sure the holidays run smoothly, the bills get covered, the family looks good. And you've spent just as long taking me for granted." "That's not fair," Mom tried to protest, but I held up a hand. "No, Mom. What's not fair is how you treated me. You chose Lauren like you always do. So I chose to stop being your doormat. You didn't want me on the trip, fine. But you don't get to enjoy my hard work without me." The air between us was heavy, the tension thick enough to cut. I grabbed my bag from the porch swing, my movements calm but final. "I'm glad you made it back safely, but don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I'm done." Their voices rose behind me as I walked toward my car. Anger, pleading, guilt. But I didn't turn around. For once, I didn't care about smoothing things over. The drive home felt strange. Usually a visit with my family left me drained, replaying their words until my head hurt. But this time I felt lighter. I had said everything I needed to say. And for the first time, I wasn't worried about their reaction. I was free. That night, as I unpacked my feelings in the quiet of my living room, I knew something had changed permanently. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't their afterthought. And no matter how much they begged, guilted, or shouted, I wasn't going back. The house was quiet again after that confrontation, but the silence wasn't heavy this time. It was liberating. For years, I had driven away from my parents' home, feeling small, drained, invisible. But after facing them down on that porch, after telling them the words I had buried for so long, I drove home with something else in my chest power. I made tea, curled up on the couch, and replayed the scene in my head. The look on their faces when I finally said I'm done. The disbelief, the anger, the guilt. They hadn't expected me to stand my ground. They had always counted on me, folding on me, sacrificing my dignity just to keep the peace. But that day, I hadn't given them what they expected. Still, the aftermath wasn't easy. That night, my phone buzzed again with messages from Mom. This time, her words were softer, but no less manipulative. "Christy, we just want to talk. We didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't shut us out." I stared at the screen. For a brief moment, my old instincts flared. The fixer in me, the girl who wanted her parents' approval, whispered, "Maybe you should call her back. Maybe you're being too harsh." But then I remembered Lauren rolling her eyes, calling me dramatic. I remembered Dad saying I had gone too far. I remembered Mom's cheerful smile on the porch when she told me I'd been replaced. Those memories slammed the door on my weakness. I set the phone face down and let it buzz unanswered. The days that followed were a strange mix of peace and restlessness. I had cut myself free from years of manipulation, but now, who was I without the role of fixer, without being the one who kept everything together? One evening, Grace stopped by again, her hair tied back, carrying another pair of coffees. So she asked with a grin, "How did it go?" I laughed, exactly how you'd imagine. They're furious. Lauren is pouting. And Mom? Well, she's probably drafting a new guilt campaign as we speak. Grace snorted. Let her try. You've finally got a backbone, Christy, and I'm not going to let you lose it. Her words warmed me. We sat on the porch swing sipping coffee as the night fell around us. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't completely alone. That night I pulled out my notebook again. This time, instead of listing all the dreams I had buried, I started sketching plans. Travel, classes I wanted to take, hobbies I wanted to explore. My pen moved quickly, the page filling with possibilities. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the surface. That the real storm hadn't hit yet. My parents would not let this go so easily. They never did. They would come back with more words, more tactics, more attempts to drag me into the role they had written for me long ago. But for once I wasn't afraid, because I had tasted freedom, and there was no way I was giving it up. As I sat there that night staring at my notebook, I realized something. The real story wasn't the ruined trip. It wasn't even about Lauren. It was about what would happen next. The choice between falling back into the old role or finally breaking free for good. And trust me, what came after this would test me in ways I never expected. Stay with me, because the real twist was still ahead. When my parents finally returned to their routine after the failed trip, I knew it wouldn't be long before they tried to force me back into mine. And I was right. One evening the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. My mom's tone was unusually soft. Hi, Christy. How was your week? I braced myself. Peaceful, I said flatly. That's good, she replied, hesitant. Then came the hook I had been waiting for. We've been thinking about what happened. Maybe we handled things poorly. Poorly. The word made me laugh bitterly. Poorly is when you forget to send a thank you card. You replaced me on a trip I planned and paid for without even asking. That's not poorly, Mom. That's betrayal. She sighed. We didn't realize how much it would hurt you. I cut in quickly. And Lauren. Does she feel bad, or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation? She's upset, Mom admitted reluctantly. But maybe she could have handled things better too. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. It was the closest thing to accountability I had ever heard from her. And yet I wasn't ready to let her off the hook. This wasn't just about the trip, I said firmly. It's about years of you putting her first. Years of me picking up the slack. I'm not doing it anymore. Her silence told me she knew I meant it. That night after the call ended, I felt an odd mix of emotions. Relief that they were finally acknowledging their behavior, skepticism that it would ever truly change, and a fierce clarity that whether or not they changed wasn't my responsibility anymore. The next weeks were different. I started making choices for myself. I signed up for a photography class I had always dreamed of. I joined a local hiking group. I even started planning another trip, this time for me alone. Italy, Rome, Florence, Venice. My chest filled with excitement just thinking about it. The first night in Rome was unforgettable. The city buzzed with life scooters weaving through traffic, voices echoing off stone walls, the smell of fresh bread and espresso filling the air. For once, I wasn't the planner, the fixer, the overlooked daughter. I was just Christy walking cobblestone streets with my own freedom as my compass. I wandered without a schedule. I ate when I was hungry. I stopped to admire ruins, fountains, and paintings just because I wanted to. No one rushing me, no one dismissing me, no one stealing my seat at the table. One afternoon, I sat on the Spanish steps, a gelato in hand. I pulled out my journal. For years, my goals had been written in the shadow of my family's needs, but now my list looked different. Learn a new language, start a small business, travel to at least 5 more countries. Each item on the page felt like a declaration, a promise to myself. And sitting there, I realized this trip wasn't about running away from them. It was about running toward me. What? Have you ever had that moment where you finally did something just for yourself? A class, a trip, even a small purchase that wasn't for anyone else's benefit but yours. I want to know if you had the chance right now. What would be the first thing you'd do just for yourself? Drop it in the comments. Let's share those dreams out loud. Because mine were only just beginning. The week I spent in Italy changed something inside me forever. Each morning I woke to church bells ringing across narrow streets, sunlight spilling through shutters, and the smell of espresso drifting from cafes. I wasn't rushing to answer anyone's demands. I wasn't double-checking anyone's itinerary. I wasn't sacrificing myself for someone else's comfort. I was living on my own terms. In Florence, I wandered through the Uffizi Gallery, marveling at works of art I had only ever seen in books. I lingered in front of each painting as long as I wanted, without someone sighing in impatience beside me. In Rome, I stood inside the Colosseum, the weight of history pressing down on me, and thought I built this moment. Not for my family, not for approval, for me. But the truth is, freedom was both exhilarating and frightening. I had spent so many years bending to others that sometimes I caught myself wondering, was I being selfish? Was I wrong to walk away from them so completely? Those doubts crept in late at night, when the streets grew quiet, and the journal lay open in my lap. Yet every time the doubt whispered, the memory of that porch slammed back. My mother's casual smile as she announced Lauren would replace me. My father's silence. Lauren's smirk. Those images reminded me that this trip wasn't selfish, it was survival. On my last night in Florence, I booked a table at a small family-run restaurant overlooking the Arno River. The sun melted into hues of orange and pink as I ate pasta I couldn't even pronounce. I watched couples laugh, families past bread children chase each other between tables. And, for the first time, I didn't feel envy. I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt content. I wrote in my journal that night, I don't need their approval anymore. I am enough. Returning home felt different than I expected. I unpacked my suitcase, setting small souvenirs on the shelves, a leather bookmark, a tiny bottle of olive oil, a postcard of the Duomo. Each item was proof that I could create joy for myself without needing permission. Of course, my family didn't let the silence last. The text came again, this time carefully worded, softer in tone. Hope you had a nice trip. Maybe we can talk soon. I stared at one of those messages for a long time. My chest tightened with conflicting emotions. Part of me still craved the peace of reconciliation. But another part, the stronger part, remembered the years of being invisible. I wasn't ready to reply. And for once, that was okay. I spent the next week redecorating my living room, replacing old hand-me-down furniture from my parents with pieces I had chosen myself. I painted the walls a warm cream color, hung photos from my trip, and bought a rug that felt like stepping onto a cloud. Every detail was mine. Every corner of that room reminded me that my life was finally my own. One evening, as I stood back to admire my new space, Grace dropped by again. It looks amazing, she said, her eyes wide. I smiled. It feels amazing. For the first time, this house feels like me. Grace squeezed my hand. Then don't ever let them take that away. Her words settled deep into my chest. I knew the battle wasn't over. My family would keep trying. But for the first time, I felt strong enough to resist. And that's when it hit me. The trip wasn't the ending of my story. It was the beginning. Because the real question wasn't whether I could survive without them. It was what I was going to build now that I was free. And that next step, that next chapter, was going to test me more than anything before. Stay with me, you'll want to hear what came next. It was a quiet Thursday evening when the phone rang again. I hesitated, staring at the screen. My mom's name glowed back at me. I could have ignored it, but some part of me, curiosity, maybe made me swipe to answer. Her voice was softer this time, almost hesitant. Hi, Christy. How was your trip? I kept my tone neutral. It was amazing. That's good to hear, she said, pausing like she was searching for the right words. We've been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we handled things poorly. Poorly. That word again. I clenched my jaw. You didn't just handle things poorly, Mom. You replaced me on a trip I spent 2 years planning and paying for. Without asking, without caring. That's not poor handling. That's betrayal. Her sigh carried across the line. I know. Your dad and we didn't realize how much it would hurt you. I pressed harder. And what about Lauren? Does she realize it too, or is she still blaming me for ruining her vacation? She's upset, Mom admitted after a long pause. But I think she knows she could have handled it differently. For a brief moment, I was stunned. Was this accountability? Was my mother finally admitting fault? But I couldn't let myself be fooled so easily. This isn't just about the trip, I said firmly. It's about years of being overlooked. Years of you putting her first. I've carried the weight while you handed her the spotlight. I'm not doing that anymore. There was silence. Then quietly she said, We don't want to lose you, Christy. We'll give you space if you need it, but I hope you'll let us back in someday. I ended the call with mixed emotions. Relief that she was finally acknowledging something. Skepticism that she would actually change. And above all, the realization that whether or not she changed wasn't my responsibility anymore. In the weeks that followed, I held my boundaries firm. I responded to texts when I felt like it, not when guilt demanded. I let calls go unanswered without the weight of panic crushing me. And slowly, I started to build a life that felt wholly mine. I signed up for that photography class I'd written in my notebook. The first time I held the camera in my hands, adjusting the lens, focusing on the details of light and shadow, it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I joined a local hiking group, breathing in the crisp air of mountain trails. My legs aching in the best possible way. I even started sketching business ideas, dreams I'd buried under years of family obligation. Every step I took away from them, I stepped closer to myself. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. My parents' voices lingered in the back of my mind, whispers of disappointment and guilt that I had carried for decades. I could feel the storm gathering again, 'cause people who are used to controlling you don't give up easily. And that's where I want to leave you, with this thought. What happens when the people who always expected you to fold finally realize you won't anymore? Do they change or do they fight harder to pull you back? Tell me what you think in the comments, and if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Because trust me, the twist that was coming would shake everything I thought I knew. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to take on a new rhythm. I no longer felt chained to the constant buzz of my phone. I didn't jump every time a text came through. Instead, my days were filled with things that actually mattered to me, snapping photos in my new class hiking trails that left my lungs burning and my heart alive, and sitting in quiet cafes where nobody knew me as the fixer. One evening, as I reviewed a batch of photos for my first assignment, I thought about how much had changed. The Christy who used to bend until she broke was gone. I was someone else now, someone who could stand on her own 2 feet. And yet the storm wasn't entirely gone. My parents still sent the occasional message, carefully worded, softened with apologies. But under every sentence, I could hear the same undertone and expectation that eventually I would fold. I didn't fold. Instead, I booked another trip. This time it was shorter, just a weekend getaway up the coast, but it was mine. I packed light drove with the windows down and let the salty wind whip through my hair. Standing on a rocky cliff overlooking the crashing waves, I realized how much power there was in simply choosing myself. It wasn't about punishing them anymore. It wasn't even about proving a point. It was about living free. When I came home, I started tackling small projects around the house. I repainted my bedroom in a shade of soft blue that felt calming. I replaced the old furniture that had been passed down from my parents with things I had chosen for myself. Piece by piece, I carved out a space that was entirely mine. Grace noticed the difference the next time she visited. "You look lighter," she said, sipping her coffee as she scanned the new room. I smiled. I feel lighter. You know what that is? She asked. That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's weight. Her words hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. She was right. For years, I had been dragging the baggage of a family that never saw me, and now for the first time I was setting it down. But freedom came with its own challenges. Late at night, doubts still whispered. What if they never change? What if this distance lasts forever? What if I end up alone? I wrote those doubts down in my journal, staring at them on the page. And then I wrote the answer beneath them, better alone than invisible. That phrase became my mantra. Every time guilt tried to pull me back, I repeated it. Every time their voices echoed in my head, I reminded myself I wasn't their doormat anymore. The change was real, tangible, and it was only the beginning. And if you're here, listening, I want to say this. If you've ever had to step out of someone else's shadow, if you've ever had to build a life from the ground up, I want you to know you're not alone. Share your story in the comments, because stories like these connect us. And if you believe in standing up for yourself, in finally living on your own terms, hit that subscribe button. Let's build this community together, because what came next in my story would prove just how much stronger I had become. The following months were like watching my life bloom after a long winter. Every small step I took felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't even realized I'd lost. I signed up for weekend markets with my camera displaying photos I had taken of sunsets, city streets, and quiet lakes. People stopped, browsed, even bought prints. The first time a stranger handed me money for a photo, my chest swelled with something I hadn't felt in years, pride that belonged entirely to me. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning. At first, I was shy, used to shrinking into the background, but soon I found myself laughing with new friends as we trudged up mountain trails, our shoes caked in mud, our lungs burning with effort. On one trip, I stood at the top of a ridge, the wind whipping through my hair, and thought, this is what it feels like to live. Back home, I continued reshaping my space. I donated furniture I never liked, choosing pieces that reflected me instead of my parents' cast-offs. I filled the walls with my photos, souvenirs from Italy, and notes from my journal that reminded me of the promises I had made to myself. Every corner of the house whispered, this is yours. You built this. But even as I built this new life, the shadow of my family lingered. They still called from time to time, their messages softer, more careful. We'd love to see you, my mom wrote once. My dad's voice on voicemail said, we just want to talk. And yet not once did I hear the words I needed. We're sorry. I responded when I wanted to, short replies that kept the boundary clear. It wasn't cruelty. It was survival. I knew if I let them, they would pull me right back into that old role. And I wasn't going back. One evening as I sat on the porch watching the sky turn violet, I realized something important. For years, I had believed my worth depended on them, on whether they noticed me, approved of me, included me. But standing there in the fading light, I understood the truth. I was enough on my own. That night, I opened my journal and wrote new goals, travel to 5 more countries, learn a second language, start a business that blended my love for photography and travel. The list grew longer, bolder, freer. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about creating the life I had been denied while I was too busy carrying their expectations. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of failing. Because even failure, if it was mine, would be better than success that belonged to someone else. The truth was clear now. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I didn't even need their forgiveness. What I needed was freedom, and I had finally claimed it. As the weeks turned into months, I felt something I had never felt before: peace. Not the fragile peace of keeping everyone else happy, but the solid, unshakable peace of finally being true to myself. And yet deep down, I knew my story wasn't over. Because freedom isn't just something you win once, it's something you fight to protect every single day. The call came on a Sunday evening, months after I had started building the life I wanted. I had just finished editing a batch of photos when my phone buzzed on the counter. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it, but something in me said to pick it up. It was my mother. Her voice, softer than I had ever heard, trickled through the line. Hi, Christy. How was your weekend? I kept my tone calm. It was good, productive. She hesitated before speaking again. We've been talking, your dad and I. We know we've made mistakes. We don't want to lose you. We're going to try to do better. For a long moment, I didn't answer. A part of me wanted to cling to those words to let them wash away years of hurt. But I had learned too much to be fooled by promises. Mom, I said slowly, it's going to take more than words. I need to see real effort, not just apologies. I understand, she replied. We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the phone. Relief stirred in me, but so did doubt. Would they really change? Or was this just another way to pull me back into the cycle? And then I realized something important: it didn't matter. Their change was not my responsibility. What mattered was that I had changed. In the following months, I stayed firm in my boundaries. I replied when I wanted, not when guilt demanded. I lived by the goals I had set for myself. I traveled again, this time to Spain, wandering through Barcelona's winding streets and sitting under the shadow of the Sagrada Familia. I hiked mountains with new friends who knew me not as the fixer, but as Christy, the woman who loved adventure. I filled my home with photos and journals, each page a testament to the life I was writing for myself. And every time doubt tried to creep back in, I remembered that porch, the suitcases, the smirk on Lauren's face, the silence from my dad, my mother's cheerful betrayal. Those memories no longer hurt me. They reminded me of why I had walked away and why I would never go back. Freedom wasn't just a trip to Italy. It wasn't just redecorating my home or starting new hobbies. It was waking up every morning and knowing that my worth didn't depend on anyone else's approval. It was knowing that I was enough. Great. And if you've been with me through this entire story, maybe you see a piece of yourself in it. Maybe you've been the one overlooked, the one who gave everything and got nothing in return. If you have, hear me when I say this, your worth isn't tied to their validation. It's tied to the life you create for yourself. So tell me, have you ever had to break free from expectations that chained you down? Share it in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories of betrayal, strength, and freedom, make sure to subscribe. And when you're ready, watch the next video I've linked. Because what happened to me is just one story. The next one might be yours. When I look back now, I see that the trip was never really about Europe. It was about me. It was about every year I had spent shrinking, bending, and breaking just to keep a fragile piece that was never truly mine. For so long, I thought being the fixer made me valuable. I thought sacrificing myself was the only way to earn love. But love built on conditions isn't love at all, it's control. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. Italy didn't heal me overnight. Boundaries didn't erase decades of being overlooked. But what it did give me was clarity. Standing in a foreign city, notebook in hand, I realized I didn't need their validation to breathe. I didn't need their approval to live. My life was mine, to build brick by brick, choice by choice. The truth is, my parents might never fully change. Lauren might always believe she deserves more. But that's no longer my burden to carry. What I carry now are dreams of my own, learning new languages, traveling to new places, building a business that reflects my passions, and filling my home with memories I chose. And maybe that's the greatest revenge of all. Not anger, not punishment, but living free. Living fully. Living without apology. So when people ask me if I regret canceling that trip, my answer is simple. No. Because in canceling it for them, I finally booked one for myself. Not just to Italy, not just across oceans, but into a life where I am no longer invisible. And that more than anything feels like coming home.